Items or relics from the USS West Virginia evoke many memories, and the history brought to light by these items continually arouses interest. In mid-October 1979, the West Virginia Hillbilly began a serial entitled The Mountain State Battleship, the USS West Virginia. Editor Jim Comstock even offered free of charge issues of the paper carrying the serial to any personnel who served, worked on, or helped build any ship sailing under that name. The author, Myron J. Smith, Jr., Associate Professor of History at Salem College, at about the same time the serial began, spoke at a ceremony dedicating the secondary conning station wheel from the USS West Virginia to a permanent place on the Salem College campus. Another part of the ship, the jackstaff or flagpole from the ship's bow, stands in downtown Clarksburg on the Courthouse Square. In Charleston, the Cultural Center housing the State Museum is the location of one of the ship's bells. Another bell and the ship's silver service are in the nearby Governor's Mansion. In Morgantown, the mast of the USS West Virginia is the focal point of the Memorial Plaza in front of Ogilvy Hall. Also located there is the ship's bell, which originally saw service on the battleship's predecessor, the armored cruiser, USS West Virginia. The cruiser was launched near the turn of the century and commissioned in 1905. 11 years later, she was renamed the Huntington in anticipation that the state name could be given to a newly built battleship. The Huntington was the site of early aviation experiments with both balloons and catapulted aircraft. She brought World War I troops home from France before being placed out of commission in 1920. A decade later, she was sold. The battleship USS West Virginia was built in Newport News, Virginia, with the crew calling her the Weevee. She cruised peacefully for 20 years. On December 7, 1941, she was one of the ships bombed at Pearl Harbor. She was hit by 2 bombs and 6 aerial torpedoes. 105 men aboard were killed. 6 months later, salvage crews enabled the ship to go back to the United States for rebuilding. By the 4th of July, 1944, the USS West Virginia had the appearance of a brand new ship, a ship the Japanese thought they had sunk. That ship was present at Leyte Gulf, where 6 kamikazes failed in their attempt to re-sink this ghost of Pearl Harbor. In active duty, she sank a Japanese battleship, gunned down an enemy bomber and a fighter plane, took 2 more kamikaze attacks, and helped prepare for the landing of the U.S. Sixth Army in the Philippines. She was present at the Japanese surrender, representing the ships of Pearl Harbor, then had magic carpet duty bringing home the troops from World War II. She was placed in inactive status at Puget Sound from 1945 until 1959, when the government decided to scrap her. Models of the USS West Virginia depicting how she looked when she was rebuilt and also how she looked at Pearl Harbor have been constructed by a naval history buff, Henry Falkowski, who teaches chemistry at Potomac State College. Henry has done much research into the structure of the ships and into what it was like at Pearl Harbor. First, why was the USS West Virginia important in the beginning?
Well, she was very important to the United States fleet because she was the newest ship in the fleet. She was one of the most powerful battleships that was constructed by the United States Navy, carrying 8 of the most powerful naval rifles that had ever been mounted on any battleship.
How big was she?
Oh, she was 624 feet long. That's a little bit more than 2 football fields, and about 79 or 80 feet wide, and stood almost 12 stories high to the top of her masts.
How big a crew?
Oh, she carried about 1,986 in peacetime, and during the war, over 2,900.
And what was it like on the day of Pearl Harbor?
Well, it was Sunday morning, and everything was very quiet on board. People were getting ready to go to church and cleaning up their shoes and just generally preparing for the day. And the bombers came out of the sky quite suddenly, and they attacked the ship, and West Virginia took 6 torpedoes and 2 bombs. At that particular time, West Virginia was inboard from the USS Tennessee. That's this ship here, just about like this. The island was here, the Tennessee, and 30 yards away was the West Virginia, just like she's shown here. The torpedo struck the side of the ship here, and the bombs fell on the decks. As the ship took water on, she began to list, to this side like this. And when the captain saw this listing taking place, he ordered the crews to counterflood the ship, and 60 of her crew members went below decks and counterflooded the ship, and of course that made the ship right, and she laid flat on the bottom of the harbor instead of turning over like the ship in front of her called the Oklahoma did.
What happened to the crew members?
Well, the crew members closed the doors behind them, the watertight doors, and they flooded the compartments that they were in to save the ship. A rather brave deed that I don't know whether I'd have enough courage to do.
And they knew that they would die?
Though they were definitely aware of that, yes.
Then what happened?
Well, the Japanese dive bombers came in and started bombing the ships. Of course, West Virginia protected Tennessee. Being outboard, it didn't let any torpedoes in at the Tennessee. So they decided that they'd try to bomb the Tennessee. One of the bombs struck the middle gun on this turret right here and exploded. And when that bomb exploded, shrapnel from that bomb went across and hit the bridge on the West Virginia, killing everyone on the bridge except the signalman and Captain Bennion, who was mortally wounded. And even though he laid on the deck dying, he still gave orders to fire control the ship and to make sure that the ship remained afloat and right side up, even to his death.
And there was even some oil spilling which caused further trouble.
Oh yes, when the ship settled in the water, the oil from the Arizona, which was behind the ship, and from her own engine compartments, was burning on the surface of the water and caught the superstructure decks on fire, and many sailors had to leap off the ship to save themselves.
Thank you so much, Henry Fokoski, for sharing this with us.
You're very welcome.